25 people are scheduled to be executed in 2023. Here are the crimes they committed and the time that they spent on death row. Phillip Dean Hancock, 59 years old. He spent 22 years on death row in the state of Oklahoma. He is scheduled to be executed on May 4, 2023. On the morning of April 27, 2001, at around midnight, Robert Lee Jett Jr. passed away in his own backyard. He was 37 at the time. Police arrived at the site after receiving a 911 call from a neighbor reporting gunfire. When the police arrived, they saw Jett on the ground wailing hysterically and unable to explain what had happened. Police discovered James Vincent Lynch, 57 years old, shot dead on the floor inside Jett's house. A partially repaired Harley-Davidson motorcycle, methamphetamine and drug paraphernalia, a massive metal cage, and boxes and debris were all throughout the house. No one else was inside the house, according to police. A short while afterwards, Sandra Jett, the ex-wife of Robert Jett, and her father, Homer Farrell, told police they believed a woman by the name of Smokey had witnessed the shootings. Police spoke with Sean Smokey Tharp, the only eyewitness, a few hours after receiving this report. She gave a description of the shooter and his vehicle, but was unable to identify the perpetrator because she did not know him. The identity of the shooter was not discovered at the crime site. While responding to calls and following up on leads, it was nearly 13 months before anyone was put on trial for the killings. Eventually, a private attorney informed authorities that Phillip Hancock might be connected to a double killing that has not yet been solved. Hancock was serving time in jail in Hinton, Oklahoma, after being found guilty of drugs and handgun violations in Logan County. When they detained him, Logan County police officers seized the Jennings .38 caliber pistol. It turned out that the gun was actually Robert Jett's. Hancock waived his Miranda rights and acknowledged to shooting Jett and Lynch with Jett's gun in a jail interview with Oklahoma City Police. James Chandler Ryder, 61 years old. He spent 24 years on death row in the state of Oklahoma. He's scheduled to be executed on June 1, 2023. Sam and Daisy Hallam hired Ryder in the later half of 1998 to look after their house and horses while they were away. For roughly 4 to 5 months, Ryder resided at the Hallam's house without paying rent in exchange for labor he did around the house. Ryder announced to his friends that he was going away for some time. In preparation for the journey, Ryder kept his supplies at the Hallam's house. These items included a trailer, tools, and camping and survival gear. He left Oklahoma before April 2, 1999. He attempted to recover his belongings from the Hallams upon his return to the state. In order to perform a standby at the Hallam's residence on April 2, 1999, Pittsburgh County Sheriff's Deputy Arnold was sent to meet Ryder at Highway 9A and McNally Road. Ryder informed Deputy Arnold that he needed to get some personal items from the Hallams. Daisy answered the door when Arnold rang the bell. She gave Arnold a friendly greeting before slamming the door in Ryder's face. She expressed her distaste for Ryder to Deputy Arnold and said that none of his possessions were there. She promised to bring the stuff there the next day and said it was in storage. Deputy Arnold and Ryder agreed to get together the following day at the same time to get the items. When they got to the house, Daisy Hallam said that she did not take the items and she sent Ryder to get them himself from the storage facility. When he went there, Ryder only discovered 2 empty boxes. He went to Cindy McCord's house where he was staying. From the garage, he took a shotgun and a pistol. On April 9, shortly after 9 a.m., Michael Newman, a neighbor of the Hallams, made the decision to visit the Hallams' home to get welding equipment. He saw Sam Hallam face down in the front yard as he pulled into the driveway. Sam was stiff and he was dripping blood. Mr. Newman hurried home and dialed 911 the moment he discovered Sam was dead. Daisy Hallam was discovered in a shallow depression, lying face down around 100 yards from the house. She was partially covered in a shower curtain. The beating of Daisy Hallam took place in the home's living room. She was then taken out of the house while being wrapped in a shower curtain. The 70-year-old woman's head and face were covered with multiple cuts and bruises. She had a fractured skull, a broken nose, and a damaged left cheekbone. Her hands were battered and some of her fingers were shattered, broken, and on the verge of being severed. These wounds were referred to as defensive wounds by the specialists, who claimed that they showed the woman had covered her face with her hands. A blow to the head was determined to be the cause of her demise. According to the expert's testimony, 38-year-old Sam Hallam was shot multiple times. He was found to have at least 12 sizable shotgun pellets inside him. His heart, lungs, stomach, liver, pancreas, spleen, and left adrenal gland were all hit by bullets. Sam was walking when he was shot according to the gunshot wounds and was facing the home at the time. The gunshot wounds to his chest and abdomen were determined to be the cause of death. James Ryder was detained, found guilty, and given the death penalty. Michael Dewayne Smith, 41 years old. He spent 22 years on death row in the state of Oklahoma. He's scheduled to be executed on July 6, 2023. Michael Dewayne Smith is part of the Oak Grove Bows, an Oklahoma City-based branch of the Crips gang. Teron T. Armstrong and two other OGP members attempted to loot Trans Food Mart in South Oklahoma City in November 2000. Mr. Armstrong was slain by gunfire from the store owner. Even though Smith had deep personal ties to Armstrong, he was not a part of the heist. The two other thieves that accompanied Armstrong were scheduled to stand trial for the crime in February 2002. Smith entered Janet Moore's residence with a revolver 2 days prior to the trial. He broke down Mrs. Moore's door and confronted her, thinking her son was a police informant. Smith shot her dead when she started to scream. He cleaned the apartment to remove any traces of his fingerprints before leaving. He then walked to the AZ Mart, a convenience shop directly next door to Trans Food Mart. Sarah Puluru, the store's on-duty employee, was emptied 2 pistols into by Mr. Smith, who also stole money from the register and lit fires all around the store with lighter fluid. In order to destroy evidence, he also set fire to Miss Puluru's body and everything he had touched in the AZ Mart. He afterwards disposed of the clothing he had been wearing while committed the killings. He was apprehended, convicted, and of course sentenced to death. Wade Greely Lay, 62 years old. He spent 19 years on death row in the state of Oklahoma. He's scheduled to be executed on August 3, 2023. Mr. Lay and his son Chris Lay attempted to rob a bank in Tulsa, Oklahoma in May 2004. The Lays entered the bank armed and covered in ski masks and gloves. Chris gave the command for the bank employee to fall to the ground right away, drawing the security guard's attention. The security guard died as a result of a shootout. The Lays were hurt and escaped without any money. They did not travel very far. Later that day, authorities caught them. September 2005 saw the trial of the Lays collectively. Mr. Lay opted to act on his own behalf while Chris was represented by legal counsel. They both acknowledged their wrongdoing, but they said their acts were acceptable since the government had grown oppressive and they needed the money from the bank to fund the patriotic revolution like the founding fathers did. First-degree murder and the gun-related attempted robbery were found to have been committed by Chris and Mr. Lay. Chris was given a life sentence without the possibility of parole, while Wade Greely Lay was given a death penalty. James Derrick O'Neal, 69 years old. He spent 30 years on death row in the state of Ohio. He's scheduled to be executed on August 16, 2023. In 1993, James O'Neal was convicted of killing his estranged wife, Carol O'Neal. James was found guilty of killing the 31-year-old at her Cincinnati home. He supposedly did this after Carol threw her husband James and his sons out of the house. According to sources, Mrs. Carol O'Neal had previously requested a restraining order against James because he frequently beat her severely. Investigators were able to link the bullet to the gun that James had used to commit the murder after performing a forensic analysis. In addition to admitting to killing his wife, James O'Neal described how he broke through the front door and chased Carol upstairs. He claimed that after the woman closed the door to keep him out, he shot through it, entered the space, and shot Mrs. O'Neal as she lay on the floor. He avoided the death penalty so far as the state was unable to obtain drugs for lethal injection. But now it seems that a date has been set. Henry Watkins Hank Skinner, 61 years old. He spent 30 years on death row in the state of Texas. He's scheduled to be executed on September 13, 2023. He was found guilty in 1995 of killing Twila Busby, his girlfriend, and stabbing her 2 adult sons, Randy Busby and Elwin Collard. The murders took place at 804 East Campbell Avenue in Pampa, Texas on December 31, 1993. Skinner admits that he was present when the killings occurred and that he shared the residence with the victims, but he asserts that he was unconscious due to a near-fatal combination of alcohol and codeine at the time. In a letter that was published in April 2010, Skinner made a fresh argument that he was colorblind and unintentionally drank the dangerous concoction because he mistook the victim's fuchsia pink glass, which contained codeine, for his own baby blue glass. Just a few feet away from the couch where Skinner claims to have been dozing off is where Twila Busby was slain, in the living room. Skinner claimed that Elwyn Scooter Collar, one of the fatally injured victims, awoke him off the couch following the murders. Collar passed away on Twila Busby's neighbor's porch. 4 blocks away, Skinner found Andrea Joyce Reed's house, where she let him enter. At first, Reed claimed that Skinner threatened her not to call the police. Later on, she walked back that assertion, claiming Skinner had never threatened her, only told her not to call the police. A few hours later, Skinner was apprehended after being discovered in Reed's house pitch-black front bedroom. Skinner had bloodstains on his clothing when he was taken into custody that were DNA matched to 2 of the victims. Jerome Henderson, 64 years old. He spent 38 years on death row in the state of Ohio. He's scheduled to be executed on September 14, 2023. Jerome Henderson killed his 26-year-old neighbor Mary Akoff in her Cincinnati apartment on March 3, 1985. Before her 10-year-old daughter got home and discovered Mary Akoff's naked body, the victim had struggled with her assailant and suffered beatings and many stab wounds. Henderson broke into Mary's apartment, tried to rape her, assaulted and stabbed her repeatedly in the head, chest, and neck, and he slit her throat at least 13 times. Henderson's blood-stained shoes matched prints found at the crime site. He was sentenced to death on August 5, 1985. Richard Norman Rojem Jr., 65 years old. He spent 39 years on death row in the state of Oklahoma. He's scheduled to be executed on October 5, 2023. Layla Dawn Cummings, his former stepdaughter, was 7 years old when Richard Norman Rojem raped, abducted, and killed her. Layla was taken from the apartment she shared with her mother, Mindy Cummings, and her brother, Jason Cummings, between 10 p.m. on July 6 and 1:15 a.m. on July 7. When Rick Quimby, who worked at a motel across the street, went to check on the kids, he discovered Layla was missing and informed Mindy at work. When Jason's mother left for work, he went to sleep, but when he heard the noise, he woke up. He said in court that he didn't hear any cries or struggles, but did saw Rick. Jason told his father, Don Cummings, in court that he believed Layla was with Rick. Don Cummings is Layla and Jason's father. On July 7th, a farmer discovered Layla's body in a field. She was killed by neck stab wounds. Blood had drenched the ground 2 to 3 inches beneath her neck and chest, as well as the area around the crotch of her nightgown. The skin on her buttocks was torn and scratched with nails. Although her hymen had suffered blunt force injuries, no sperm was discovered in her body. The majority of the information linking Rojem to the crime was circumstantial. He recently divorced Mindy and made an effort to patch things up. He was aware of her work schedule and the malfunctioning apartment door lock. Near the flat, a plastic cup with his fingerprints on was discovered. Rojem contacted his workplace at 1:14 a.m. and asked the dispatcher to record the call at 12:35 a.m. Later on, he asked that the call be recorded at the proper time. The outside packaging of a condom was discovered by the police in Layla's nightgown's folds. An order form packed with that brand of condoms was also found at the crime site. Police discovered the condom packet and a used condom containing semen when they investigated Rojem's room. This made up the entirety of a condom package. The bathroom at the bar where Rojem had been featured a dispenser selling this generic brand of condoms. Just before leaving the bar, he had gone to the bathroom. The 2 rear tires and 1 front tire of Rojem's car were identified by tire track impressions close to the body. The other front tire's track impression did not match the one on Rojem's vehicle. However, the state provided proof that Rojem had changed that tire on July 7 in the morning. The other tires were 15-inch non-radials, whereas that one was a 14-inch radial. Rojem had requested that a co-worker inform the police that he and another employee had changed his tires following a blowout. The police may have a tire they used to put me in jail. Rojem warned the co-worker, and if you don't tell them you changed the tire, it'll be death punishment and 2 lives instead of 1. The co-worker refused to lie. Rojem claimed to have owned the car the entire time and that it had been involved in a homicide, according to a different co-worker. Melvin D. Bonnell Jr., 66 years old. He spent 36 years on death row in the state of Ohio. He's scheduled to be executed on October 18, 2023. In Cleveland, Ohio, on Bridge Avenue, Robert Eugene Bonner, Edward Birmingham, and Shirley Hatch lived together. At around 3 in the morning on November 28, 1987, Hatch heard a knock on the apartment's kitchen door. When Hatch asked who was there, a voice at the door responded, "Charles." Melvin Bonnell entered the apartment through a door that Bonner had opened and shut it behind him. He yelled an insult in Bonner's direction before firing 2 bullets at him from a short distance. Hatch, who had seen the shooting, hurried to a bedroom where Birmingham was sleeping as Bonner collapsed to the ground. Hatch alerted Birmingham to the fact that Bonner had been shot, and after hearing 2 more gunshots, he ran out of the flat to scream for help. Birmingham entered the kitchen and saw Bonner being pounded in the face by Bonnell, who was standing on top of him. Birmingham also noticed that Bonner's body had been shot. Birmingham seized the assailant and threw him outside the apartment. Bonner suffered a gunshot wound to the chest, which caused his death. He was shot twice, once in the chest and once in the pubic region, according to an autopsy. Both bullets were found within the victim's body. Melvin Bonnell was soon after captured by the police as he was involved in a car accident, and Birmingham identified him at the hospital where he was transported. Emmanuel Antonia Littlejohn, 51 years old. He spent 31 years on death row in the state of Oklahoma. He is scheduled to be executed on November 2, 2023. Littlejohn and Glenn Bethany robbed the Ruth and Scott in Oklahoma City while they were both 20 years old. Kenneth Mears, a 31 years old victim of the heist, was slain as he approached the perpetrators with a broom. Littlejohn received a death sentence, while Bethany received a life sentence in jail. Littlejohn acknowledges taking part in the heist but claims not to have fired the fatal shot that struck Mears. Littlejohn had requested the Supreme Court to review whether his death sentence was lawful, since the jury had not been informed that his brain damage from his mother's extreme drug and alcohol misuse during the pregnancy could have been a possible explanation for his criminal behavior. Keith LaMar, 54 years old. He spent 31 years on death row in the state of Ohio. He is scheduled to be executed on November 16, 2023. Keith LaMar, then 13 years old, was busted in Cleveland while joyriding a stolen vehicle. He accepted responsibility and was imprisoned for 6 months as a minor. Later, he was discovered stealing jewels. He entered a guilty plea and received a 2-year sentence. He was accused of murder in 1989 when he was 19 years old due to a botched drug deal. He entered a second guilty plea at that time and started his 18th to life in prison sentence. 4 years later, on Easter Sunday of 1993, LaMar was charged with planning the murder of 5 other inmates in Lucasville, Ohio, in what is still the biggest prison riot the state has ever seen. He has consistently denied being involved in the rebellion or the killings. In the spring of 1993, after then Warden Arthur Tate ordered convicts to undergo tuberculosis tests, the Lucasville riot broke out. Since the test contained phenol, a type of alcohol that is prohibited by Islamic law, a group of Muslim prisoners organized the protest in opposition to it. Prisoners were on edge due to overcrowding as well, since the authorities had recently transferred 300 prisoners from Mansfield to Lucasville. Additionally, Tate had put new restrictions on inmate liberty. LaMar was one of around 300 prisoners who gathered in the prison yard for more than 2 hours of recreation time on April 11 about 12:30 p.m. He and his boxing partner trained by running 15 kilometers around the track. A guard ran out of a prison door covered in blood around 2:45 p.m., followed by a disguised prisoner brandishing a nightstick. The men were lining up to go back to their cells at that time. The prisoner pummeled the guard while screaming, "We taking over." 3 prison gangs took control of the Southern Ohio Correctional Facility over the following 11 days. 9 inmates and 1 guard perished during that period. LaMar maintained his declared innocence, but the state disagrees. In court documents, lawyers said that in the first hours of the riot, LaMar and 2 other inmates enlisted the help of 6 other prisoners to establish a killing squad. To conceal their identity, they put on masks. For weapons, they retrieved shovels, bats, and exercise equipment. Declaring, "Let's kill all the snitches," they went looking for and attacked prisoners they thought were spies. supplies. According to LaMar, the following happened. He instantly went to the prison's L6 wing where he was being held and where the fighting had started to check on his possessions. Once entering, he saw that a prisoner who has allegedly being held as an informant was being kept in his cell. A rebel leader handed him a decision: either follow the leaders or disperse. He decided to leave. 10 minutes after leaving the yard, he was back there. When the Ohio State Highway Patrol showed up and relocated prisoners to a gym in a separate area of the prison, he stayed there until 2:30 or 3 a.m. Elwood Hubert Jones, 71 years old. He spent 29 years on death row in the state of Ohio. He's scheduled to be executed on December 6, 2023. Rhoda Nathan, a 67-year-old visitor at the Embassy Suites in Blue Ash, where Jones had worked in maintenance, died after being beaten in September 1994. Days later, when Jones visited a hospital to receive treatment for a cut on his hand that developed into a severe infection, Jones, who had previously been convicted of felonies for burglary and theft, became a suspect. The cut was revealed to be infected with Eikenella corrodens, a bacteria that is typically but not always prevalent in people's mouths. According to the prosecution's argument, when Jones punched Nathan, he received the cut from her mouth. Jones claimed that when emptying a garage bag full of partially consumed food into a hotel dumpster, he slipped and hurt himself. A necklace that police claimed to have discovered in Jones's toolbox from work, which was in his vehicle's trunk, was another damning piece of evidence. Police seized the car after the murder but failed to lock it up. Days later, they claimed to have found a special pendant that Nathan was known to wear. Police took a full year to charge Jones with the crime despite having that proof. Jones had insisted on his innocence from the beginning and claims cops planted Nathan's jewelry in his toolbox to frame him. At the time, he was one of numerous hotel staff members who had prior arrests. After Jones' arrest, a number of room robberies that the hotel had been dealing with persisted. A lady detained in the county jail in 1995 said her husband murdered Nathan. Police did not look into the allegation or inform Jones' attorneys of it. Jones first became aware of the details in 2016 while pursuing a fresh trial. Jones's attorney, Barnhart, believes Earl Reed, a prisoner who has since passed away, was the actual murderer. Kevin Ray Underwood, 43 years old. He spent 17 years on death row in the state of Oklahoma. He's scheduled to be executed on December 7, 2023. Jamie Rose Bolin, a 10-year-old girl who had gone missing and for whom an Amber Alert had been issued, was being sought by authorities. On April 17, 2006, Underwood, who shared an apartment building with Bolin, was taken into custody. He told Oklahoma detectives and FBI officials that he had killed Bolin and tried to sever her head off. "Go ahead and arrest me. She's in there. I chopped her up." Following Underwood's admission, Bolin's body was found in his bedroom closet, hidden inside the sizable plastic container. According to Purcell Police Chief David Tompkins, Underwood's fantasies to kidnap a person, rape them, torment them, kill them, chop off their head, drain the body of blood, rape the corpse, devour the corpse, then dispose of the parts and bones came to fruition with Bolin's murder. Underwood was found guilty of killing Bolin by striking her with a wooden chopping board. Police reported finding barbecue skewers and meat tenderizers at the scene, which they believe were meant to be used on the victim's corpse. A jury found him guilty of first-degree murder on February 29, 2008. On March 7, 2008, a jury recommended the death punishment. Keep in mind that all these are scheduled executions. It doesn't necessarily mean that they will all happen. As you probably know, the dates can be moved and postponed for numerous times. Thank you very much for watching the video. If you like it, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Now go watch this video of the last words of all women executed in the US. See you next time. Bye bye.